And if you work with the same people over time, those prices will come down.
In this video, we're going to look at Doris's 5-year journey in building in Ghana, all the way from the UK, the lessons learned, the experiences gained, the mistakes made, and more coming up next. Tell us a bit about yourself, please.
Thank you for having me on your channel. I am a British-born Ghanaian. I live in London in the United Kingdom. My parents emigrated from Ghana to the UK back in the 1960s to build a new life and to start their family. So I'm one of 5 children. My parents, as we were growing up, told us lots and lots and lots about Ghana. Didn't get the opportunity to visit as a child, but did visit in my early 20s.
At what point did you decide that you want to have a property in Ghana?
I came back from Ghana after my visit in 2014 and started talking to my mum and dad about it, and their initial reaction is it's really complicated, you've got to be really careful. Of course you can buy property, but you just need to be really mindful, you're not ready, you should wait, so you have the family house. And I'm the kind of person, if you tell me to wait, that's a challenge. In itself. I was determined. I did wait, of course, and when I travelled it was around about 2016, 2017, I made some more inquiries whilst over there about properties because I felt I was truly ready to make that move and actually go and purchase somewhere. So I set about going out and about and looking at some estates, because at that time a lot of estates were being built all across Accra. Visited 2 or 3 and they were really beautiful places. They had security 24/7, maintenance, beautifully landscaping, etc. And the properties themselves were really, really nice. But what occurred to me really quickly was that they weren't quite right. And I'll give you an example. They might have like a fairly large living room, but the kitchen would be really tiny, or the master bedroom would be really big, but the other 2 rooms felt quite boxy. And, for the money that you were paying, and back in those days when I was looking, 3-bedroom property was going for around about between sort of 50 to 75, 80. So, really reasonable compared to today's prices. I felt that with the money that I had kind of been saving between sort of 2014 and 2018, I could probably get more for my money if I set about to buy some land and build. I've never built in my life. I had no idea at the time what building meant. But I know when I came back from Ghana in 2017, I said to my parents, I'm going to buy some land. And I mean, my mother, she said, if you go and buy land, they will chop your money for you. You don't know what you're talking about. So she was quite negative. And I suspect that's because family members had experienced such instances. But I am a determined person. So I said, okay, I hear you, but that's what I want to do, because I've looked at houses that don't seem right to me in terms of what they're giving you for your money. I really want to go and purchase land. So that's where the kind of decision to purchase land came from.
Tell us about the process and journey to acquiring land and all that.
In 2018, I went over because I was going over frequently, and I shared my decision with my cousin, and I said, I really want to buy land. I don't want to buy an estate house. I don't want to buy a house. I just want to build my own house. So first things first, I've got to buy land. So he said to me, actually, there's a really great lawyer who is actually selling land, and he's credible, so we can go and visit him and have a chat. So I went along to see the lawyer, and as it turns out, the lawyer had lived in the UK for the best part of 40 years. He came as a young man to study and qualify as a lawyer. He had returned to Ghana when he was probably about 50, in his early 50s, and we spent quite a lot of time. He was actually interviewing me for the land, but versus me interviewing him. Obviously, I was trying to find out, the land and sort of the story behind him selling land, etc. But he was also, and I suppose I'm going to use this word, evaluating me and seeing if what he had was right for me. And so we had, a long conversation in his office. We were in his office for around about an hour and a half. And it turned out that he studied in Holborn, which is actually not too far from me, in London. So we talked a lot about London politics, London life, and more importantly, what was I looking for in terms of purchasing land and what I wanted to do with it. So I explained, having lived, having lived in London all my life. I wanted to build a house that had big rooms, space. I didn't want neighbours on top of me, because if you know London, everybody's on top of each other. It's very hard to get space. And so I went in to talk to him about purchasing land. I actually went in to buy 2 plots, and each plot is 70 by 100. I actually came out of that meeting with him having purchased 4 plots. And to be honest with you, it was the best decision I've ever made. So at that time, he was selling each plot for 20,000 cedis. So I bought 4 plots, and that amounted to 80,000 in total. So obviously I was delighted, excited to have made the purchase. But of course, as I was going through it, my cousin says to me, okay, it's great, but we need to go and start to do some work in terms of doing search, because you need to be 100% sure that the land is registered in his name. The gentleman that I bought it from had given us the indenture, so we went to the lands commissions in Kofradia, and you have to pay for that, obviously. And you give a copy of the indenture and your picture, and there's a bit of administration documents that you need to provide. They go off, they tell you to come back at a certain time. I think it took about 3 weeks for the land search to happen. And they called and said, we've got the results, come back. So we went up to Kofradia again, and they said, yes, the land is registered to the gentleman that you made the purchase from. So we were like, wow, thank God, fantastic.
How did you get a contractor and all the masons who did the work for you?
It is definitely a big risk, because you have to put your trust into somebody, right? I mean, there are lots of contractors in Ghana you can go and hire, but if you don't have background, history, or someone else that's used them, it's really risky. I was fortunate enough that my cousin, he trained in technical arts, building, construction, and stuff like that, but actually he ended up in the military. So he took on that role for me in terms of managing the construction of the building, everything from the profile through to the actual building, bringing the building up. But what he did do was he appointed a contractor to do the profiling, so, if you think about it, I purchased 4 plots. These 4 plots are just past Amasaman in Dobro. It's an area called Dobro, just past Amasaman, full of coconut trees. So, he worked with a contractor, first of all, to clear all the coconut trees, then to sort of dig up all the sand, which he didn't throw away. He kept to one side because they were going to use that once they'd done the profile work, and he worked with the contractor and his team to kind of get the profile up and ready. I was really, really lucky. I think, without his support, I think it may have been a different story I'd be telling you today, but certainly he was very, very involved in making sure that everybody that was engaged into this project did their part, and he held them accountable, and he ensured that, he was sense checking, if things didn't look right, he was challenging, the contractor and saying, no, this is not correct. This is the correct way to do it, and making sure that this building, as it started rising from the ground, was being constructed in the correct way, for which we were really lucky. I mean, the other thing that I didn't mention, I think I should mention, is that I obviously went to see an architect, because you can't really raise a building without an architect, because otherwise what do the people work to? What do your contractors work with? So I met a great architect who I spent a couple of hours with, going through the drawing, what I wanted, talking to him about what I wanted for the house. And I left Ghana, came back to the UK, and my cousin continued with that piece of work. And of course, there was phone calls with me, and that drawing was released eventually, which became, the main point in terms of how to bring the building together. So we had that contractor involved in the project for about 1.5 years. And it rose from the ground all the way up to the flow. It's a story building that I'm constructing at the moment.
When did you start the building process?
It started in 2018 actually. So as soon as we got the all clear from the Lands Commission that the land was registered to the person we had purchased it from, that's when we set about getting the contractor in to start the excavation of the coconut trees, the grading of the lands, and then obviously doing the profile, and then bringing all the labourers in. The labourers were part of the excavation actually, and then bringing on board the steel bender, the carpenter. So it would have been around about 2018. It was towards the latter part of 2018. We did go ahead, once we got the all clear that the land was registered to the person we had purchased it from, we did go out and start to build. And it was really interesting because we did go out and start to build. We were about to go and get the building permit when the building permit people turned up at the site and removed all our tools and wrote produce permit, one of the walls. So we went to the building permits people and we got our permit within the space of about a week. It was really quick actually, so we were able to continue. So the building work stopped for about 1 week, but we did get the permit. We also took the opportunity at the same time to go and get the land registered in my name as well. We thought we might as well go and get that done so that we don't get any further problems. So we went back to Cofradia, submitted all our documents. That went off. That took about a month and that came back, and I've got the documents now with my name written on them.
How much did it cost for the foundation and the building structure, and also how many bedrooms did you decide to do?
I decided to build a 4-bedroom house with a double garage on the 1.5 plots of the land. I have the option to do a further bedroom if I want to, but I've decided not to do that for now. I wanted to make sure that the building and the rooms were built and big enough to meet my vision. And my vision is that I want space. Having lived in London all my life, space is a premium. And if you want space, you will pay, and you pay a lot of money. What I'm constructing in Ghana today would be millions here in the UK. It would cost me millions. That's the reality. So it's what I'm paying in Ghana is a fraction of what I would pay here in the UK. So I could never do it in the UK. That's a matter of fact. But I can have what I want in Ghana. In terms of cost, to do the foundation and to raise it to just to raise it from the ground, came in at around about roughly between 20 to 23,000 cedis. That was back in 2018, 2019. And that includes labour, cost of materials, and other costs. Water, of course, when you're doing things like that, you've got to bring the water on site, you've got to bring cement. And just to give you an example of the prices back then, a bag of cement was 28 cedis. So that shows you the cost. I mean, first lot of iron rods that I purchased was something like 2,000, and I had to buy a ton. It was about 2,000, and I remember saying, oh, that's really expensive. Well, if I thought it was expensive then it's definitely expensive now in comparison to prices back then. Starting from the beginning through to raising of the building. When I say raising of the building, I literally mean not to sort of full extent, but just to sort of, if you like, the sort of first floor, just the ground floor. It probably came in at around about anywhere between 20 and 25,000, all materials included in, because blocks were cheaper then, cement was cheaper, and labour costs weren't so high. And you do have to factor in labour costs because you've got to negotiate. I was paying a contractor, so the labour costs were caught up in that. But that changed when we stopped using the contractor. It's probably a little bit more, and it's really unfortunate I don't have the data to give you the actuals. It probably was a little bit more than that, but I wouldn't say any more than, say, 25, 26 maximum, but that's cedis, yeah. Look, building is not as easy. I think we all know that it's a big commitment. But it's a commitment that's worthwhile in the long term. When you're building a house, and every single item, ranging from a nail through to the pane of glass, through to your tiling, through to the kitchen, the toilets, the showers, the POP, the electricals, that's all got to be funded by you. I'm building this house on my own. I don't live with anyone. I'm doing this on my own, And, you know, there has been challenges along the way in terms of personal challenges. There's been bereavements where I've had to pause the building because obviously that's someone very close to you passes away in the family. You know, there's been 2 big bereavements in my family over the last 2 years. So I've had to pause to focus on that. In addition, financially, you know, you can save and, you know, and you've got to be really, really clear. You've got to sacrifice certain things to make sure your building project happens. And so, you know, I didn't take a loan out because I didn't want to be financially tied to a bank, paying them interest in order to get this house done. I said to myself, if it takes me 10 years, it'll take me 10 years. But at least I know when I get to the end of it, I haven't got to pay anybody back a penny. In terms of how much I've spent so far, I can tell you that the house is now standing. It's complete. Windows are in. My borehole is done. Electric wires are in. We've started the tiling. The wall is around it. So far today, I've spent over 100,000. So roughly 20,000, something like that. But honestly, you know, every penny that I put into that building is money that I am really comfortable with going towards that. I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever because what I see is something that I can stand by in the future and say, this is my home, or this is our home, or, you know, the children around, you know, this is your home, you know, and nobody can take that away from you. It is a big commitment and there will be challenges, and I face challenges along the way. I'm currently pausing for 3 months because, you know, as I've said many a time, you know, getting the building up and constructed is fine. But it's when you go in to do the interior, that's when it's equally as expensive, you know, buying the doors, your windows. I mean, my windows, just to do the windows downstairs, the first round, and not all of the windows, 17,000 just to do. And that was not the whole of the ground floor. That was specific. Some may say, oh, but you went for really expensive windows. Yes, I probably did. But I want the quality because I want it to last long term. Things like the doors, you know, I spent money on the doors because, again, I wanted the quality because I want it to be there long term. So it is about what's in your pocket. And, you know, I will say it's not a race. 5 years feels, you know, like a long time. My parents, it took them something like 15 years to build theirs, but it's standing, it's theirs, and they don't have to pay anybody back. And, you know, I'm of the same view that, you know, I set out in 2018 to buy land. I've got the house standing, tick. I'm now on the last leg of it, and that is to make sure that the house is done, you know. And the other thing that I didn't mention was the roof. You know, once the flow had been done and the rooms upstairs had been constructed to a whole upstairs area, we had to go for the roof and purchase the roof. And, you know, that's another big cost, you know. So there were financial challenges that will stop you. But I would say don't let it prevent you from continuing, you know. Stop, pause, save, and then go on to the next phase. You know, don't let anything stand in your way because you will get there in the end.
What are some of the lessons learned, the challenges, the advice you can give, etc.?
So lessons learned is plan, sit down and plan. Don't just come along and say, oh, I want to buy that piece of land. Do your homework, do your due diligence around it, you know, ask people, talk to people, you know, where I purchased. Before I made the purchase actually, and after having spoken to the lawyer that I purchased it from, I actually went to the site and I actually went around and met a few people. I just kind of introduced myself. I think they must have thought, who is this lady? But I was like, hi, you know, I'm interested in buying this land. And they were like, oh, you're welcome, you know. And, you know, I made a point of actually meeting the chief as well, and kind of formed good relations. And I think because I did that, I didn't suffer with landguard issues. And I don't know whether that's connected or not, but I didn't suffer any landguard issues at all. No one came near. And I suspect partially it's because My cousin is in the military. He never wore his uniform ever when he comes to the site, so he tells me. But I also believe it's because I went and formed good relations with the chief, and I, got him a bottle of schnapps and introduced myself. So when he sees me, he's like, "Oh, hello, sister, how are you?" And so kind of get to know what it is you're going to buy. Don't just let someone tell you, "Oh, it's, a great place." Do your due diligence. Definitely do your searches before you pay up front. Go and find out whether this land is actually, really genuinely it's owned by the person that's selling it to you. And I can tell you, one of the biggest learns, couple of big learns, is when I was doing my roof, I saved for the wood, and the wood came to I've spent about 12,000. I went to Ofankor, the timber market, to purchase the wood with the carpenter. I was the only female that day in the market, so it felt quite overwhelming, but I was determined to be there to see what it was like and purchase the wood. What I hadn't done was I hadn't saved for the actual roof. For some reason, I thought, oh, the roof can go on whenever. Actually, the reality is, what you've got to remember is Ghana's a tropical country. It rains. I had the wood put on in January. We were about starting rainy season, around about March that time, and the rain was coming down. My cousin was out of the country. He had been sent on an operation, so he was going to be out for a year. And the carpenter was saying to me, "Madame, you need to put your roof on, because if you don't, the wood is going to spoil." And I remember getting a phone call from my cousin, and he said to me, "What are you doing? You've just spent 12,000 cedis, plus you've paid the carpenter, 4,000 to do the construction of your roof. And you are telling me on the phone that you don't have money for the roof. Go and find the money and put the roof on. Otherwise, you're going to have to rebuy the wood all over again." So plan ahead. Don't, things like that, don't, because, once the wood is gone, it's gone. You've got to buy it, do it all over again. You'll pay the labour costs all over again. That was a big learn for me. The other thing to factor in when you are planning is to understand the way our artisans work are different to the way they work, whether you're based in Europe, whether you're based in America. We call for a service in UK, US, Europe, wherever you are. That person, the workman, will turn up, they'll do the job. When you are building in Ghana, every single cost comes down to you. And I'll just give you an example. If you purchase cement, they're not going to bring it to your house free of charge. You will pay transportation costs. So factor in transportation costs. If my windows, for example, when I did the windows, I paid 17,000. This was just the first part of the windows. Bringing them from the shop to the site, you have to pay. It's not coming from the shop that deliverer. The workman, that's the window installer that's going to install it, that cost is yours. So there are hidden costs that you do need to think about when you are building. It's not just a straightforward case, I've bought windows and they're going to deliver them tomorrow. Yeah, they'll do that, but the cost will be yours. A bit like when we buy a washing machine, from a retailer. Sometimes some retailers will charge you, other times they won't. It depends who you're buying it for. But the difference in Ghana is that everything you purchase, especially if it comes to the site, you will have to pay for. That's the bottom line. And in addition, when you're doing work with the artisans, they will often ask for at least half of the money up front. The other thing I've learned is, and I will absolutely share this because I think it's really key, learn to negotiate. You will ask for a price. They will give you a price. Oh, trust me. And if you don't challenge it, you will pay that price. Learn to negotiate. I learnt the word, my Twi is not great. It's British Twi, and so everyone laughs at me. The one word I learnt very quickly was, "Oh, Charlie, tisu. And they would laugh at me. I'd say, "Oh, power chop, tisu. And they would laugh and they would reduce it. And now the conversations I have with them when they call me is like, "Oh, auntie." I'm like, "Don't auntie me. Why are you charging me 4,000 when you know the job is 2,000? In time, but it's an art that you need to learn. So don't always take the first price. Sometimes the first prices they give you are correct and there's no negotiation. But majority of the time, you can negotiate a little bit. You can get some off. And if you work with the same people over time, those prices will come down because they know you, they know your project. And I feel that one of the big benefits for me in having my house built is I've kept the same group of people all the way through. And they have encouraged me. When I've had moments where I've wanted to give up because I'm fed up, they have encouraged me. "Oh, you've done well, oh, you will finish it." And I will finish it this year because this is the 5th year, and this is the year where, you know, I'm going to Ghana in December, and I'm going to go and sleep in my house. And I'm so delighted that, you know, I'm actually going to sleep in my house and not going to stay in my sister's house or my mum's place or my family house or my auntie. And that is a real massive achievement to me. So just some things to be aware of. The one remaining thing I will say is building a house when you're outside of Ghana, you're sending money home all the time. Know that when you're sending money from abroad, there's a cost and there are challenges sometimes, because the frequency that you're sending money often triggers alerts with the money people that you're using. From the UK, where there's 2 main agencies that send money to Ghana, and when you send over a certain amount, they start asking questions. And, you know, I completely understand, because, you know, they're a money company, so they've got to look out for things like money laundering and fraud and stuff. And, you know, there are times when it's critical that you've got to get the money across because they're doing a piece of work for you. And the money exchange agency will say, your transaction is being reviewed, we'll come back to you. So there's been many a heated phone call between me and the money sending agency to say, why are you holding the money? I've got people waiting in Ghana who are waiting for this money. And they're like, you need to send a copy of your bank statement. You need to do this, you need to do that. If you send money to a bank, the person going to the bank in Ghana, they will get asked the same level of questions. There's a lot of scrutiny. It is tough. And on top of that, you're being charged. So it's quite tough. It's quite tough. The other tip I will give you when sending money, when the exchange rate reduces, I often stop sending money because it costs me more when the exchange rate goes down. When the exchange rate goes up, as long as you've got someone trusted on the ground, or if you've got an account in Ghana, send the money over. Just send it, because when the exchange rate's high, things are a lot cheaper for you to do. You get more for your money. So just some tips when you're building for abroad. But saying that, honestly speaking, I look back at the last 5 years, there were moments where I just thought, what am I doing? There were moments where I just thought, I feel really proud. Today, I'm so excited. I can't even put it into words. You know, I share pictures of my house with my friends here, with my family, and my family say to me, amazing. You've just, if you know me, I'm not really a buildy type person, you know, more into like hair and fashion and things like that. And they're all like, wow, you've done so well. So, you know, I'm really looking forward to the future and getting off the plane at Kia, jumping in the car and driving to my house. I'm super excited. And one of the things that I'm going to celebrate the finalisation of my house is by having a housewarming party at the end of the year to officially open my house. I'm really excited. Look, you know, it is a challenge. I remember the first time I went to see my site, when it kind of got to sort of when they were starting to do the flow, I remember arriving on site and there were all these labourers, and they must have thought I was my cousin's side chick or something. And, you know, my cousin introduced me but didn't say anything more. And they completely, you know, they just didn't acknowledge me. And then he said, this is the owner of the house. And literally they all just turned around and looked at me like, how can this small woman be the owner of the house? You're going to face challenges, and you will face challenges in terms of when you go to the authorities, when sometimes when I was dealing with a contractor, he met me for the first time, because you're a woman. The expectations that women don't do this kind of thing. When I went to the timber market, and as I said earlier on, as I alluded to earlier on in the interview, I was the only woman in the market, you know, and they were all looking at me. And, you know, the couple said, this is the lady, she's purchasing the wood. This is a lady. And they were like, oh, madam, come and sit down. Come and sit down. You know, it was a real shock. I will say to you as a woman, be strong. Get involved. Male or female, get on that plane. Go and see your project. Don't leave key decisions to the people on the ground. It's your money. You make the decisions. You go and you check. Make sure you are checking. And, you know, be involved. But more importantly, be strong. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Be strong. But if you're a woman, it's a little bit more harder. But, you've got a voice. Use it. You've got to be tough. Building is tough. Even in Europe and UK. If you're a woman, you sometimes find that, you know, you're treated slightly differently. But honestly, I think in Ghana, when they realise it's a woman that's doing it, massive respect. If anything, they really respect you more. And I've found that once they've realised, actually, this woman is as tough, you know, as they come, you know, they actually, the respect is massive. And it's been a real pleasure working with the people that I've worked with over the last 5 years, and they, you know, totally and utterly make sure that when I call and say, are the tiles done? Oh yes, madam, let me see, you know, and they know if I say do it that way, they'll do it that way, you know. So build the relationship. Don't shy away from difficult conversations. Have those difficult conversations, because they will listen to you. It's your money at the end of the day. You know, you have standards. I have certain standards. To leave decisions to your cousins or the person on the ground, it's not good enough. You've got to come along and check. You know, your people will say to you, oh, don't worry, madam, I'll pick the, you know, we will lay the tiles, we'll do this, or we will buy them for you. You'll come along and it won't be to what you expected. And that's why you've got to commit and come over, even if it's only once a year. Come and see how your project is progressing. Do the checks. It's so important, because if you don't come over and see what's going on, then when you do turn up and place is being constructed, but it's not being to what you expected, you can't really say much. So I make sure I come over twice a year to make sure that what is being shared with me on the phone, on video, because I do see it on video when they're doing work. I get daily calls when we're doing a big piece of work. I get pictures, but I actually want to see it. And I go twice a year, and key pieces of work, like when they were doing my ensuite, I purchased all the materials and I said to them, I don't want you to do anything until I'm there for you to show you exactly how I want it done. And that's been it, because, and I can tell you one thing, when they was constructing the house, they did the kitchen, and you'll see from the pictures, the size of the house is very big. The kitchen was literally like a shoebox. And so I called the contractor, and I called my cousin, and I called the other mason, and I said, what is this? Look at the size of this house and look at the size of this kitchen. You couldn't swing a cat in here. Why have you built me the tiniest kitchen? And they all looked at me, and I thought, thank God I'm here. I had to get them to knock the kitchen down, literally take it down and rebuild it. So if I hadn't have been, and I had to pay, thank God I was there and saw it. Otherwise it would have been left. And if I hadn't have travelled over and I'd left it for a year or so to travel over, I would have gone, and that kitchen would have been plastered and gotten so far. So it's really, really important to be involved. Make sure you, when they're doing key phases of your building project, they're calling you, you're seeing it on videos, they're sending you videos, you're getting pictures. But more importantly, get on a plane, if only once a year, and go and see, because I bet you when you go, you will definitely have something.
We are going to leave Doris's details in the description of this video, so please make sure to check her out. And then also click on this video where we give you all the reasons why you need to start building in 2023 or forget about it. We'll see you on that video. Thanks, Bebre.